Really, on behalf of Asia Society Hong Kong, I want to thank Dean Collins for being a wonderful partner of Asia Society Hong Kong. Ever since he arrived a few years ago, we have been really working on some wonderful programs together, doing Art Basel, doing even not doing Art Basel, and thank you, Dean Collins, for working with Asia Society Hong Kong. And I really want to thank Mr. and Mrs. Kinsey, Bernard, Shirley, and Khalil. You all have just been fabulous to work with, and I know a lot of the friends of yours are here from all over the world, and what a wonderful place for us to host this talk and to learn more about this wonderful exhibition that's just opened today at the Hong Kong University Museum. And I'm hoping to get there. I will get there this weekend to see the wonderful collection. And as a Chinese American, I used to run a little museum in Chinatown called Museum of Chinese in America, and I know how important telling our story is. And it doesn't have to be through, it's just through the artifacts and through the collectors, and so much can be told in a piece of object. And I think at Khalil, Bernard, you have done a wonderful job of sharing with us your love, your passion for collecting, and your stories. And I think that's very important. I think right now we're living in very interesting times. In fact, today I was just talking to Dara. A lot of interesting news have broke this afternoon, and we're still digesting, as well as what's happening around the world, whether it's in Europe or United States. And change is constant. But I think in terms of our stories, that they cannot take away. And it's sharing those stories that I feel is very much what Asia Society here is about. We were founded by John D. Rockefeller 60 years ago in New York, using the artifacts, the wonderful collection he collected throughout Asia, and using those artifacts to tell the story of Asia. Here, we do not have a collection here in Hong Kong, but what we're really proud to do is to really share other people's collection, whether it's through our own gallery or through programs like tonight. It's very, very important to hear other people's story and to be sympathetic, to understand the story through these wonderful collections. So really, it is my honor, and I've been looking forward to seeing and to hearing this talk. I've seen parts of it, but I know it's going to be fabulous to have all three Kinseys here tonight to share their passion for this story. And right now, I want to introduce somebody that really is our partner in crime, and Dara Paradiso. Dara, ever since you arrived, about a year ago, we've done wonderful program with the consulate. About a few months ago, we were able to bring a wonderful Chinese American chef who was the chef who worked with the President and Mrs. Obama on the White House State Dinner. And we were able to bring Anita Low out here and to do a wonderful week-long program. And her story, she's Malaysian Chinese, her family's from Malaysia and also Detroit. And through food, we share her story. So Dara, you have been a wonderful friend, and I know we have a lot more project in store working with the consulate. And Dara is also a fellow foodie, but I can't wait to do further program with the U.S. Consulate. And Dara, her title is Director of Public Affairs, U.S. Consulate. So, Dara.
Good evening. As Alice said, I'm Dara Paradiso. I'm the Director of Public Affairs at the U.S. Consulate. I will keep it short because you've already heard from my boss this evening, and you heard from my big boss last evening. And also because I'm so excited about this event. I've been working on this for such a long time now since I arrived that I'm so excited I'll probably forget what I wanted to say in any case. I have been looking forward to the events of this week, especially the opening last night, for a very, very long time. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with all of the partners involved in this project. Thank you to Asia Society for hosting, and indeed, we are just getting started. We have lots more good cooperation to come. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know the Kinseys and to have you here. I'm so impressed also by all the friends and family who have come to support you. It's really amazing to see this global gathering happening. And I want to say a special thank you to the University of Hong Kong Faculty of Arts and the museum. Watching you guys build the partnerships that you have over the last year has been really amazing. These guys have worked to bring together all different parts of Hong Kong society in support of an American exhibit and something that is so important to me and to my country. And it's been amazing to see how you can bring together NGOs in Hong Kong, government, universities, students, business, and everyone takes an interest in it. And I think that, as Mr. Kinsey said last night, no matter how you come into the exhibit, you'll leave changed. That's definitely true. It's a really outstanding and amazing exhibit that has a very important message about valuing diversity, but it also has a very important message about the general humanity. And I think that right now it's been an interesting and a tough year, full of a lot of sort of crazy news and a lot of turbulence. And I think that in times like this, when policies are uncertain and politics are turbulent, that's the time when the connections people to people matter most. So if there was ever a time in our history where we needed to be listening to each other and trying better to understand each other and connecting over the things that really matter to people, food, art, music, family, this is one of those times. So with that, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone involved in this project. It's very, very important at this time. And with that, I will turn it over to the Dean of the Faculty of Arts at University of Hong Kong, Professor Derek Collins.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say a few words. So much has been said, and so I don't want to really restate the points that have been made. This has been a labor of sort of fascination and love at the same time. I've only been in Hong Kong for about a year and a half. I came to Hong Kong with a vision to try and promote art and culture and to try to put the Faculty of Arts at the center of it. But what I met when I got to Hong Kong was a whole lot of other people who wanted to do the same thing in terms of really elevating the bar of art and culture in Hong Kong. Asia Society has been a terrific partner since basically we set foot in Hong Kong, long-standing collaboration with the university. We went first to the U.S. consulate, Dara, her current boss, her current boss's boss, and then her previous boss. All of the consulate consul generals, the former and previous one, the one you saw last night, Mr. Kurt Tong, have been just unwavering in their support and their commitment. And then they helped open up doors for us so that we could go and meet businesses and CEOs. And as we went out into the community and talked about what we were trying to do on behalf of the Kinseys in this extraordinary collection, to our surprise, and actually real surprise, our two major sponsors, American Airlines and in particular Goldman Sachs, told us that we not only value diversity because of our clients, we're actually dealing with this internally in our companies. We want to make a more equitable, a more inviting and inclusive environment for our employees. We also, at the same time, we value diversity because it's part of our ethic to want to try and be as inclusive as possible. So this was great. So they jumped on board. And then our supporting organizations just continued. That is to say, the Mandarin Group, the Hong Kong Tourism Board, even the Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce, they're not up there, KBK Enterprises, Carapelago, which actually provided a little rum last night for those of you fortunate enough to make the opening and leave in definitely a better state. But the partnerships with the business community in particular are valuable to me because they prove something that I have long believed, which is that they are really our best university partners. Certainly government is too, but the business community, the for-profit community has got to be aligned with the nonprofit community, and that's where the magic happens. And so that was really sort of the background and the foundation, you might say, that has helped to make this exhibition possible. But I want to close by saying that this could not have been possible at all without the Kinseys. And you all know that in general, but there's a very specific way in which you have to understand that. The Kinseys have a vision for the kind of collection that they wanted to make. And it maybe didn't start, maybe it started a little bit less coherently than it became over time, but it started deeply rooted in the family and in their sense of self and identity. And it grew out of that. So if you go and you experience the collection and you learn something about African American history, fantastic. Euro-African history, fantastic. If you learn about artists and culture that you didn't know about, that's also fantastic. But don't lose the point that this is a collection that's been brought together by a family with a sort of singular vision to make their own identity known to themselves and thereby to make it known to others. I think it's really, really important. It's why it's the Kinsey collection and not the Smithsonian or some other collection. And I think you need to really understand that. They will say a lot more about that tonight. But to me, that's an indispensable part of why the collection is precisely this combination of history and art. It's beautiful. So thank you so much to the Kinseys for everything that you've done and for letting us share a little part in this wonderful journey. This is just the first of what we know to be a much larger global footprint for the Kinsey Collection. And thank you all for coming tonight. I think the Kinseys will just choose who will come up first.
We're not going to say anything. We're going to run a video. But thanks so much for joining us.
It is called The Personal Treasures of Bernard and Shirley Kinsey. The collection features rare pieces which until now have been tucked away in a private gallery.
We are at the home of Bernard and Shirley Kinsey to take a look at the Kinsey Collection.
The Kinsey Collection pays homage to African Americans who've helped build and transform the United States.
Once scattered by history and now gathered in a single collection, a cultural inheritance for African Americans.
Tonight, a conversation about the intersection between art and history with Bernard and Shirley Kinsey.
Documenting the African-American experience from the early 17th century through the tumultuous civil rights era, the Kinseys have had a 30-year love affair with collecting.
The Kinsey Collection started 30-plus years ago.
We didn't start out for this to be a collection, but we're delighted that it has happened that way, because the more we began to understand and know about our history, the more we felt that other people needed to be touched and know about it too.
Some of the items were passed down through their family. Some were purchased at auctions, and others were acquired during the Kinseys' numerous trips around the world.
We've been to 90 countries and 6 continents, and we basically collected something from all of these 90 countries. But our real focus has always been, how do we speak to the African American experience?
Their collection isn't only African American, but mostly paintings, sculpture, and documents from the distant past and the not so distant.
I love this letter. A letter from Malcolm X to Alex Haley, 1963.
Over the years, they realized they were collecting a story.
When we came to the Americas from Africa, how did we evolve? And that evolution is both painful and wonderful. And putting that together is what we tried to do here.
It's been quite a journey for a couple who met as college kids at predominantly black Florida A&M in 1963, when students were fighting for civil rights.
I met her after she got out of jail.
They've grown so close.
Demonstrating. So, sit-ins.
They finish each other's sentences. So you knew she was something special from the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Both now are retired from Xerox, where Bernard rose to become vice president. He's now a much-in-demand business consultant.
Fast forward to the present, the couple holding a news conference in Washington, D.C. as their collection, the shared treasures of Bernard and Shirley Kinsey, now greets visitors to the busiest museum in all the world, the Smithsonian.
I have opened numerous exhibitions throughout my career, but few have excited, few have challenged, few have moved me as much as the Kinsey Collection.
As the first African American ever to publish a book of poetry.
This is my first time seeing the collection since I did the recording for it. So it's kind of fantastic. It's a wonderful way to show that we too are part of the fabric of the making of this nation, which sometimes I think gets forgotten in the telling of the American stories.
Efforts like this are efforts to fill that gap. This is really important for young people. Knowing who you are is the best grounding you can get.
I am immeasurably proud of my parents. Every day I learn something from them continually. I get to work with them, and if you'd asked me 10 years ago if I'd be working with my parents, there wouldn't have been a chance. But it's been remarkable to see their partnership.
The Kinseys have reached a stage in their lives where they can afford to indulge their passions, one even greater than collecting, sharing. Together, they have raised more than $22 million for scholarships at historically black colleges.
You know that black people have been a part of everything that's happened in the Americas almost from the beginning. And having that connection with the past and with history is what really creates this sense of strength inside of us, and to know that we have this identity and this lineage that is so powerful. We think what we have is the beginning of this story about this wonderful, wonderful race called African Americans that came out of a terrible situation.
I want our people to be empowered by all the accomplishments, all the things that we did in building this country. And as Bernard says sometimes, let everybody know we got dibs here. Okay? And we didn't always come here as slaves. We came here as free people initially.
Okay. I have the privilege of being the person who's going to moderate the conversation. And I think this is going to be the easiest and the loveliest conversation I'm going to have. We've seen from the film how passionate they are, and I really want to take the story back to the very beginning. I want to ask, do you remember points when you suddenly thought to yourself, I'm not just a casual buyer of art, I want to be a collector. This is something which really mattered. I was wondering if you can share that early moment of your collection coming together.
I'll take a stab at that.
Do you want to? There's a mic on the table.
Hello. I can remember fairly distinctly. Bernard and I traveled, as you saw from the exhibit there, the video there. We traveled extensively the first 10 years of our marriage before Khalil was born. And Bernard had been a park ranger at the Grand Canyon the year before we got married. So we would always go to the Grand Canyon to visit. We started collecting Native American art, actually. And then we started traveling, and we realized everywhere we went, we were interested in the indigenous cultures that were there. And at some point, we said, we really don't know enough about our own culture. We were seeing similarities between places that we'd visit, and wondering if those same similarities existed with us, actually. Then Khalil was born, and we realized, we had this young person here, and we needed to be able to share some things with him that we didn't know. Third grade family history report was a big event for us. He came home talking about kids who could go back to the Mayflower and who could trace their history back to Spain and to Italy and to Germany and to wherever. And we just called to Florida, where our parents were, to ask questions. Well, we could only go back so far. Then, of course, he had to do reports at school. So our intention was that they would always be about African-American heroes. We were going to look and find people that he could write reports about. And he used to say, why do they always have to be about black folks? And we said, so you will know and you can tell other people this. And it just kind of transpired that way. Then I remember distinctly, in 1978, Bernard was branch manager in Oakland, California with Xerox Corporation. I'm going to take a few more minutes here on this. And there was an artist that we'd come to know whose name was Ernie Barnes. And his paintings always reminded us of when we were young, because they showed these elongated figures, and somebody's making a basket, somebody's jumping ropes, somebody's shooting marbles, and it reminded us of home. Well, Bernard decided that year that instead of giving his top salespeople plaque with their stats on them, he was going to give them an image of a Ernie Barnes painting called High Aspirations. And he put the salesperson's name and stat on that, and that was their award. And to find out years later, the people we ran into said they still had it, and what it meant to them was really special. Now, we didn't realize at the time that we were actually trying to share something of our culture even then. That was 1978. And we went on from there. We met artists along the way. We started collecting. The history part came in just a little bit later, and Bernard's more the historian in the family. Khalil always says Bernard likes the dead artist, and I like the living artist, which is fairly true. But the real beginning of our collecting art was that. If any of you remember a show called Good Times, do you remember that a little bit? The art that was shown on that show that JJ was supposedly be painting was done by Ernie Barnes. Okay, so that's a little bit of that start. You want to add to that at all?
Well, I mean, you covered that really well. The historical part began when I received a document from a business partner in Florida. And I got this FedEx envelope, opened it up, and this was a bill of sale of a young African-American man from Alabama being sold for $550. And I will always remember how this document affected me in just profoundly. And the question I asked then, and we still continue to try to answer, is how did this happen? And then how did black people get in this predicament in America? And that question I'm still researching. So beginning with that 1832 document, I began to read. And I tell anybody, before you buy a piece of art, read, because it'll sharpen your eye and you'll know exactly, And so beginning with this document about slavery, we began this quest to know more about ourselves, with Khalil. And the idea with the Kinsey Collection is where history and art intersect. There are a lot of exhibitions around the world that deal with art. There are a lot of them that deal with history, but there are not any that I know of that go after both of them. So this family said, we're going to do both. And it's a big story to tell the African-American story, because what we're really telling you is the historical record of America, because everything that happened in America can be seen through the lens of African Americans. And I say this with profound understanding. When you know this story for the first time, you will see 2020. Otherwise, it's blurred vision, because what most people were taught in history was his story. It did not have the Indians. Over 2 million of them were in America when Columbus, quote, discovered something that was already occupied. And there were Latinos and the African Americans, that contributed mightily to every aspect of American life, and not just in the manual labor. And we want to disabuse that the only thing that black people did was pick cotton, tobacco, sugar, and other crops. We built literally everything that America exists: ceramics, silver, wrought iron, architecture. We did all of the furniture. There's a young man named Thomas Day out of North Carolina that literally built the furniture business in the 19th century in Milford, North Carolina. And when you talk about a day bed, you're not talking about a day bed. You're talking about Thomas Day, okay? So, and we'll talk about this more, but that kind of gives you a frame. But through this conversation today, I want you to start looking at how we're going to take this. The frame of understanding the African-American story is how you understand America, okay? And it's even more important now with the foolishness that's going on in America politically, in terms of all of the things that goes on. And you could trace almost all of that back to slavery, including the election of Donald Trump, 1787, the Continental Congress cut a compromise with the South to increase their population by counting their enslaved people as 3/5. The 3/5 document, which is one of the documents in the Kinsey Collection, essentially founded the Electoral College. There have been 2 elections in America where the president lost the popular vote, but won the Electoral College. President Bush and now President-elect Trump. So what happens from an African-American viewpoint matters, okay? And when you understand that, it's not about just African-American, it affects Latinos, it affects Asian, it affects women, it affects gays, it affects disabled people. It literally, everybody in America, and America leads the world, is affected by what happens there and is rooted in race. And I'll leave it there, okay?
I know we have a set of images that we're going to be showing later on. So before we start showing those images, and then we can carry on our discussion far more and pick up on some of the issues that you just raised there, because those are pertinent questions to the collection. I do want to bring the story now to Hong Kong. Why? This is the first time you've shown this collection outside of America. Why Hong Kong? Would you like to take this one?
Let Mr. Kinsey take that.
My father would say, we go where we're welcomed. And that, I mean, we do lead with that. I will say that everything that has happened in the existence of what is now known as the Kinsey African American Art and History Collection has been a natural progression. It has not been anything that we really have set out and pushed. It truly has been a cosmic evolution, if you will. Even from the inception of the collection, it was an article that was in the Los Angeles Times that the original intent of the article was to speak of my parents' home from an architectural standpoint. And when the journalists visited their home, this is 2005, they saw that there was so much more to share. And they wrote a 5-page, there was a 5-page article in the Arts and Living section in the Sunday Times that was titled, "These Walls Do Talk." Now, I will start with, my parents had always been natural sharers and teachers of their collection. I was in college when they really started diving into the historical side of things, but even prior to that, they were hosting art shows at their home and exposing artists to their friends and supporting these artists and raising their visibility and all of that. So they've always participated in the culture of it all and the evolution and the support of it all and this framework, but they had no intent of this being an exhibit or a business or anything like that. But through that article, the attention was, the visibility was raised, and thus museums started getting in contact. And the proposition was, do you keep it in your home and you share it with the visitors that enter your home, which may, amount to a couple hundred or 500 or 1,000 in a lifetime, versus what has now been 10 years and over 6 million visitors, and what is, we have an exhibit at Disney World that they expect over 20 million visitors. So you have that, and my parents were very responsible in that decision, because a lot of private collectors keep it very private, and you'll never know the amazing collections and the wealth of information that are in these collections and in these homes. But what my parents, and I'm very proud of that decision, because it is an agent for change, and it is creating impact. And now we are here in Hong Kong, where again, a natural evolution. My parents are here on holiday along with my uncle and aunt, who are here tonight, back in April of 15, and they are introduced to Florian, the director of the museum at HKU. And this conversation leads to what is now this exhibit. I mean, and with my parents were here on vacation. They weren't here, So again,
well,
natural evolution, natural evolution. I don't think that we would have it any other way.
We're very lucky that you came and met our director at the museum. We're very, very lucky that on your visit and your tour trip, which also brings me to ask about, there is so much I just also wanted to share. I've seen this exhibition at Hong Kong U. I went today, it was my 3rd time, because there's simply so much to take in. And I'm not familiar with this history. And so I was just consuming. And I think you described it as a reading exhibition. And I think that's such a apt term, because you start at the beginning, you look at the documents. And each time I've ran into someone who also had the same idea as me to go and see the show. And today I ran into artists. And these are Hong Kong contemporary artists. They're very well-known figures. And they were just so intrigued, because they have no idea what African-American art was like. And so we went around together to look at their artwork. And they were so flabbergasted, partly because they had no idea what to expect. They were quite blown away by the diversity of the different kinds of styles of different art. And I think it goes back to one of the key points that you had, which is that you can't really tell, in some of the works, not all the works, in some of the works, you really can't tell what ethnicity this artist is. It's just simply art. And that was the story we ended up with once we went round through the show. So perhaps this is a good time for us to actually introduce the audience to some of the works that's in the exhibitions, and then perhaps we can talk about some of the paintings.
Before the art, before the images, there will be a few concepts that we would love to share with you that really inform you on our intent and what is the underlying theme throughout our exhibit. this is what we strive to do. And this is a quote from my father. And if you'd like to repeat it and quote, but we strive to, in essence, highlight and celebrate a people who have never been highlighted and celebrated and did such amazing things and contributed so greatly to the framework and success of America. And so we want to give them, as my father said, we want to take them out of the graves and celebrate them and give them a voice, a name, and a personality, and to enlighten the population on all of these things that we thought we knew or we overlooked, but that will inform us more and be able for us to have a better, respectful conversation about race, about life in general, so we can get to a better place. And in America, I think you should take this one, actually.
Well, I guess for the first, well, we've been 22, 23 cities. We were going at this with the underlying theme that we wanted to change, but we weren't really, we were pricking at the skin, but we hadn't started, and we hadn't really done it. And I guess the last several places, we decided that that race is fundamentally at the core of everything that America does, everything. And it's been exported all over the world, here in Hong Kong, and you see it everywhere you go. So the question about it, if we don't tease this out because of what the material does, because it does it so well, you're kidding yourself. And we concluded that this is a good way to say it. So we say, in America, your skin speaks before you do. I would say, in the world, your skin speaks before you do. We were in the Maldives. There was a Chinese young man, Charles. He had his 90 degrees, and he was always covered up. And at one point I said, and he was always talking about how, being black, he didn't know what black folks were, African Americans, but he loved the color of our skin. And he just confided, he said, my mom would kill me if I get to be black. Because in China,
meaning if he got too tan,
in
the sun, that's why he was so covered up.
Yeah. So she said, don't come on too black. You follow me? So.
And I asked him, I said, did she really say that? And then he explained, though, he said, yes, because the neighbors would think that you've been working in the fields.
Microphone, Ma.
Yes, because the neighbors will think that you've been working in the fields. And that was not a job that she wanted the neighbors to think her son was doing. He said, well, Mom, I work at the beach. I'm in the sun all day. But it was just very interesting that he felt comfortable enough to say that to us. We'd been kind of hanging around. He was our butler, actually. And so we'd see him like every day. And he was always just covered head to toe. And it's just an interesting concept, especially after being here and seeing all the advertisements for the whitening products.
Sure, here in Hong Kong.
I could understand what he meant.
Okay.
It's a current around the world, and I contend that perhaps maybe America has been the catalyst or accelerated that. But me speaking personally as a young man who growing up in a great set of circumstances, but having to deal with so much just based on the color of my skin and being judged and treated a certain way in my own neighborhoods, and being felt like I didn't belong there by police, by proprietors, store owners, all of that. I can tell you firsthand that your skin speaks before you do. And there's historical evidence that America has racially profiled pretty much since its inception. So with that, and America being such an influence in the world, of course it projects and influences the rest of the world in that manner. And that's the concept.
Yeah. The three components of culture are simply this: what people think or believe, what they make, and what they do. So we wanted to boil this thing down. I said this the first night. For a culture to thrive and to go forward, you need three things. You need someone to produce that art or pieces. And we have Floyd Newsom and Ava Cozy, two artists that are in the Kinsey Collection. You get a chance to see that later here. And then you have to have a place to show it, in this case, Hong Kong Museum, Hong Kong University Museum. And then you have to have collectors like us. So it takes that for it to go. And without these three components, guess what? it dies. And what we are faced with in the African American community is to continue to keep the culture alive by having people express their belief in what and how they live. And that's why particularly to visual art is so important. Even though we love African American music, it's everywhere. But I believe that visual art is even more important because those expressions on these canvases just tell everything because they come out of a deep place in that person's psychic that in some cases are hard to express. And as we take you through some of the Kinsey collection, you'll see how this came about. Okay.
And now the images.
Well,
oh,
I'm mistaken.
Okay.
One last concept, and this may be the overarching theme of everything. The myth of absence is a concept. It was Dr. Leroy Bennett, correct? Who coined this concept, and it is to be invisibly present. And that doesn't really make sense when you say it. But when you think about it, it states that African Americans in America and in American history and how it's taught are invisibly present. It's like what my concept, and my father always shares it, but I have a little update on it. It's like organizing your, let's say your prom, right? Organizing your prom in high school and being part of the organizing committee. You shape the whole event. And they take the photo of everybody on the committee, and then when it's released, you've been photoshopped out of it. That is literally what has happened in America when it comes to African American contribution, life, identity, and especially in a positive way and in a positive light, and the impact that it's had on America and by extension the world. And that is what we strive to change in our own little way, is to shape, and expose and expand the consciousness and the concept of African American identity and contribution. And from that standpoint we approach the collection, and that's why we choose to we don't shy away from the extremely painful and heinous act of American slavery and events of American slavery, and that should never be overlooked. But we choose to highlight even more the incredible beauty and incredible interaction and community and these amazing contributions. You're going to hear contribution a lot because it's just not shared. And we choose to take that approach because we think that's a much better and more productive conversation to have because it raises the respect level.
Yeah, to build on Khalil, the myth of absence really is putting the African American narrative in the story. And what has been so, we have a saying, be careful what you think because you don't know where it came from. Because most of us are picking up thoughts and ideas that have no basis in fact. So one of the key components of the Kinsey Collection is rooted in two principles: management by FACT. In other words, everything that we talk about is factual. We've gone out and sourced the most unbelievable documents, books, manuscripts, and items, and we've allowed those to speak as opposed to us speaking. We think that's the other way to do it. And then the second concept is the concept of learn, use, teach. So we want you to learn, we want you to use it, then you want to teach somebody else. So with this, we're in 11 school districts now in California, and we just received a letter of endorsement from the state superintendent. As you know, California is the largest school district in the country. It's huge. And we're close to getting the Kinsey Collection curriculum in the California schools. Now, all of a sudden, the myth of absence becomes less, right? Because we're going to go right at this thing. And what we're doing it with is primary source documents. And that has been I'll give you an example. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, we acquired a document, 1833, Andrew Jackson writing the Secretary of War, Benjamin Butler. And I know all these guys intimately. And Andrew Jackson is telling the Secretary of War to remove all of the Indians from the South so white settlers could take the land to plant cotton. So here we go again. Everything that happens in America, you can trace it back to slavery because it was so pervasive that everything had some emanation from the $3 billion that cotton represented in America's economic revival. In other words, we went from a backwater nation, and in 1 or 2 generations in the 19th century, we catapulted Russia, Spain, France, and Britain. And we haven't given it up yet. And it's all because of the ingenuity, hard work of African Americans in building America. And we want that story out, okay, in a different way. And we want to stop walking into places with our head down because we don't belong there, because people don't value us in the right way. So it's a lot of pieces that we're coming at. And I think Hong Kong will understand that because we know that you have ethnic minorities here that may or may not get all that they need to get out of this. But we do also understand that they are never going to be of the Han Dynasty. We understand that. But we have an opportunity to really contribute to the narrative here in Hong Kong. And I love what Derek represents because he's on the cutting edge of bringing a different way to teach and think about this cultural piece, okay?
Well, let me just, I do want to jump in because we will look at the art because they are fabulous.
It's coming next.
It is coming up. But I do have one question, and it's partly a response and partly a question, because I do love the document part of it. And when I was reading through the documents, I was really struck by the kind of coldness that was in some of the writings, some of the things. I mean, they were treating people like property. But at the same time, even though it's facts, it's done on paper. You can really feel the sense of history. You can really feel the sense of someone. It's an intimate history. It isn't just, it's a human history there. Now, it also made me feel really sad because I'm not really quite sure how much we have learned from history. So when you take because there are still so many problems, and it seems to be all these cycles of problems. So when you take your collections to to various places, universities and different schools, how do you face that, especially when you're taking it to schools in states where there are such strong racial issues and problems, like Mississippi State? I believe you took it there.
Oh, we did a show at Mississippi State, 14? That's where Morgan Freeman, I'll give you an example. Morgan Freeman, who we did not know, a friend of his in LA heard us speak. He came up and said, Mr. Kinsey, Morgan Freeman is my best friend. He needs to see this. And you say, yeah, that kind of thing. Guess what? Morgan Freeman gets in his car and drives 2 hours to see us.
He lives in Mississippi.
He lives in Mississippi, Clarksville. We were in Starkville.
Starkville, yeah.
And spent 7 hours with us.
He actually owns the property that his ancestors had been enslaved on. Which is really something.
I raced him in a golf cart.
Yeah.
True story.
But I mean, just a great experience. But Mississippi State, we had one of our best shows there. They just opened up because we challenge all of that. And what we do, we have so many documents now and so much art that we can fine tune it to Mississippi. We went to Arkansas. We had Maya Angelou's typewriter in Arkansas, and that's where she's from. So all of this is part of making this thing personal and getting people really to kind of set aside some of their ideas to be able to take into this information.
And I must say, Mississippi initially was a little, we were a little nervous about it, really.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was a small exhibit. It was mostly books and documents, a little art.
In the library.
They housed it in their library.
John Grisham room.
And
he took all of John Grisham's books out. Exactly. Can you imagine this? Exactly. In John Grisham's library, Dean Coleman, Khalil and I were there. Mm-hmm. She said, Miss Kinsey, we'll just take it all out. Didn't you?
Yeah, and we didn't expect that.
We didn't expect that. She took every John Grisham book out of John Grisham's library to put the Kinsey Collection in.
Yeah.
And then she said, John Stennis, who was one of the most
racist.
Just say racist.
You can say
racist senators in America history. She said, and we'll take it out of there too. You follow me?
Yeah.
So now what you're dealing with, this is how you break down barriers. So when people came to the Grisham Library, some black people said, I don't believe this. I mean, they just could not believe it in 2014 that there could be something black in John Grisham Library. All of a sudden, those barriers come down. But whites had the same kind of reaction. That's what you want.
If I could add, it's a challenge, just to be frank, it's a challenge at the beginning of every exhibit that we embark on, or the conversation about even hosting one. I would say that HKU has been one of the easiest processes because American or African American life is not known. It's devalued and undervalued. The approach is that it's not worth doing this, you know, and even here in my experience in my conversation last night, they came from a great place, but a lot of the intent said they were taken aback. They were surprised because they had no concept of what they were walking into, or they thought they knew what they were walking into because of what, you know, it's rap and basketball and everything else, right? So we have this process where we have to honestly fight to really explain what it is we are doing and what the contents mean.
And not scare them so much.
And then, but we have had a beautiful, but every time we have a beautiful experience as a result.
But was it difficult at the very beginning then? How difficult was it to get this shown? I mean,
well, we had 4 or 5. I mean, we did the Smithsonian in 2010, 2.5 million people. Unbelievable. You know, I'm a salesman at heart. So when I decide I want to do something, I do it. And I've been like that all my life. There's very little that I have looked at. There's very little we decided we wanted to do we haven't done, okay? We were in Chicago at the DuSable. We had 100,000 people see it in DuSable, 2007. We meet Anna Roosevelt, the granddaughter of Eleanor and Theodore Roosevelt. She falls in love with the Kinseys and the exhibit. She said, this ought to be at the Smithsonian. The next 3 months from then, we're having dinner with Lonnie Bunch in D.C., and 18 months later, we're at the Smithsonian. You follow me?
At the American History Museum, not the African American History, the American History Museum.
Okay.
And it was the first time they'd ever had a private collection in there.
Right.
And the first time they'd ever had, obviously, an African American private collection in there.
Wonderful.
It was fascinating.
I'll tell you about Disney. 2008, May of 2008, West Palm Beach, Florida, the Norton Museum. We had over 35,000 people. What about the Norton? We couldn't have gone to the Norton when I was growing up. So we're knocking down walls in everywhere we go. So, you know, I come up with the idea. I said, you know what? We ought to get this in Disney. I mean, it was almost like that. I knew a vice president in Disney, Bob Billingsley. I picked up the phone. I said, Bob, we need to get this in Disney. May 2008. In 5 years, it took 5 years. We opened March of 2013 in Disney. They gave us 3,000 square feet for 5 years, 15 to 20 million
Still
people.
on display.
Still on display. Wow. But let's say it this way, that was difficult. But, you know, there's a Kinsey trait. We said the Kinseys are smart and persistent. When we get on something, we stay on it. And we complete our task. You follow me? And that's what this has been. Because when you look at all of these 20-some cities, people they cannot believe this is the Kinsey Collection right here. I mean, we don't have a big staff. We don't have any staff. You're looking at them. You follow me? Yeah, you know, Khalil would say we don't have enough staff, and we're going to do something about that. But it's really been something like a family business that I love. You know what I mean? I'm working with the people I love the most, and they know. I mean, this is the best way to wake up every day. You know, and I tell people all the time, if you find something that you love doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's what. And I retired 26 years ago. Okay, so I decided. I said, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I quit Xerox after 10 years as a vice president because I wanted more out of my life. So what we do also with the Kinsey Collection is challenge each of you to do more with your life.
Okay? Well, let's be challenged. Okay. Let's be challenged. So can we start the PowerPoint? Guy?
Sure, and this we are focusing on the art component of the exhibit, but even the art component is shared through a historical lens, and is meant to put in context and the parallels that were at play in America throughout its history. This is our earliest piece of visual art in the collection, and if you look at the circa date, it's 1865. It was some of the most difficult times in America to be African American, but the narrative is that during a time of slavery, or even a time for the fight to end slavery, there were free blacks the whole time that were operating in America and making a life for themselves. And this is represented in the artist. This is Robert Scott Duncanson, Landscape Autumn, circa 1865. So I always tell young people, especially young artists who know this very well, it's hard to make a living as an artist today.
Oh, yeah.
So you think about how difficult this must have been to indulge your passions, to develop your craft, and then share it, and then find success as a black person in America in the 1800s. That's the context that we want you guys to embrace, because that is almost you can't fathom that. And there are examples. They're not anomalies. There are countless examples. This is Grafton Tyler Brown. He was on the West Coast, and so to put it in context as well, and I probably don't have to tell you all, but before photography, these were the maps. This is how you knew what places looked like. And this is Grafton Tyler Brown, who walked to San Francisco and had an office on a street, a major street in downtown San Francisco, and was a map maker and also a painter, and a celebrated painter at that. Charles Ethan Porter, who left the United States and often African Americans left the United States because, and still do, and I think about it often, because you find so much more freedom to just be. And he left and did just that, and was a celebrated artist as well. And then I'd like my father to explain who Edward Mitchell Bannister is, but he won the highest award for art in America, and was contested when he went to go pick up his award.
Yeah, I mean, this is really pretty incredible. 1876, here's a brother winning the highest award in art. And we picked him up. What we try to do with the Kinsey Collection is we try and go second, third level. So yes, he won that. But where did he come from? He came out of Canada. Why Canada? Because Canada was the only country that didn't participate in slavery. So if you wanted to escape slavery in America, you had to go to Canada. So he comes from Canada, goes to Boston, starts working for Christine Carteau, who has 2 beauty salons. They get married. She allows him the opportunity to paint, because she said, you go paint, much like what Shirley did with me. She said, we're going to save your check so we can retire early. You follow me? And, so this guy, he wins it, and the white judges, they just don't believe this. So he has to repaint it, right on the spot. But his fellow artists were so enamored by his talent that they protested until they gave this young man his award. We don't believe this happens. It happened. And this is just an example. Hit the next one.
And it happened pretty much in every layer of life, in every field and everything. And when you were good at what you did and you were successful in everything, you had to prove it, or you just had to prove it. And you couldn't just be.
Notice also that most of the paintings that you see here are landscapes. Still life and portraits were the only thing that they would have painted and been able to sell at that time. There would not have been any concept of an African American image anywhere in any of the paintings, because then who would have bought it? So this is how they made their living.
But it's beautiful work. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Also, Henry Asawa Tanner.
Henry Tanner, the first African American to go to the Philadelphia School of Fine Arts. In 1893, his fellow students stripped him naked on one of the major streets in Philadelphia and wrote Nigger on his canvas. He was so taken by it, he moved to Paris. and became quite famous in Paris. But the kind of racialized world that people lived in was just extraordinary, along with just trying to be an artist on top of it. So I love this piece. Mei Jackson. Now, here's a sister in 1899 sculpting.
For those who aren't aware, sister means a black woman.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Now, and you got to see this piece, you know, I mean, this is amazing on two levels, because it was so difficult for African Americans, but even more difficult for women to do anything in America.
And to use that medium.
Yeah. Harmon Foundation. Literally all of the artists that we collected, particularly early on, came out of the Harmon Foundation. The Harmon Foundation was the first opportunity for African Americans to actually compete for a prize. It was a $400 prize starting in 1928.
To show their work.
Yeah. So here's what we did. All I can say, getting a full complement of these catalogs is one of the most difficult things I've done. You know, we got 8 or 10 of them, but we couldn't get a full set. And we finally got a full set, which, now let me tell you what a full set means. That means from 1928 to 1935, we have literally all of the artists that were doing work at a certain level in America. You follow me? So what we did, we used this as our template to go out and acquire all of the artists that have won these awards, and that's what you're going to see at HKU. So all of the Harmon Foundation is alive and well in the Kinsey Collection at HKU. Go ahead.
And we credit this with the runway and the launching pad for what became known as the Harlem Renaissance, which changed the perception of African American artistic value and creation and identity and intellectual property as well. But also that this is also a shared history. Harmon William Harmon was a Caucasian gentleman who believed enough to start this foundation because he was taken by the works. And we all know that the only way for an artist to gain any type of visibility is to show their work. So this was their first time in American history that African Americans were able to share their work, and the award was $400 and your own solo show. And so everybody in extremely powerful works, but also artists that went on to just do incredible things and influence art on a global scale.
And by now you're seeing African American life, actually.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
how many artists were there in all?
Yeah, let me just say this.
How many artists?
And this is not just self-taught either, okay? This notion that black folks were just self-taught, that's just rubbish. We went to the same schools that whites went to, but oftentimes our work was devalued or not at all, or not even valued. But the training, the Hudson School, the Barbizon School, all of the schools that started in the 18th, 19th century, black folks went to those schools. But their work either didn't survive or did not have any value internal. What Khalil, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, Robert Duncanson, 1865, his painting is in Buckingham Palace. Derek Collins went to Buckingham Palace just a couple of weeks ago. First thing I asked you, did you see Robert Duncanson? Because he's there. You get me? The Queen Mother bought Robert Duncanson because he was so famous in Europe when he left America. And the Queen of Norway has Robert Duncanson. You see? But if you don't know he's a black man, you will assume he's white. That's the problem with the myth of absence. And that's what we have to change that to say, okay, when we can have eye-level discussion, you can say, maybe that was a brother. You follow me? That did that.
Brother is a black man.
Can I just ask a quick question? Just to get a sense of how many artists they may have supported. Do you have a sense of figures?
Oh, I mean, hundreds. These catalogs are probably 35, 40 pages, and they have artists through there with the images. These are fabulous, pieces here.
And the no pun intended, the bookend, what we always say is that it was these two, the Harmon Foundation contest and Dr. Elaine Locke, which is the first African-American Rhodes Scholar.
1907.
And he published this book, The Negro in Art, and what it did in essence is gave African Americans the permission, if you will, or the green light to go out and paint their experiences, their existence. And that's when you started seeing representation of African American life in America and abroad in terms of actual, literal, and figurative works that represented us. Not that it was a easy thing and instantly accepted and collected, but it was our way to share our experiences and to share it with not only our communities. And from that, many of the artists from here will go on.
1928. You can just go and run.
Yeah, you go and speak on it.
Yeah. Okay. James Porter.
Microphone.
Okay. Derek Collins' mother was good friends of James Porter's daughter, and we bought this painting from James Porter's daughter. Is that a great connection? And he taught at Howard University. He taught at Howard University along with Elaine Locke. And the intellectual capital for the Harlem Renaissance didn't come from New York. It came out of Washington, D.C. and Dunbar High School.
Baltimore.
And that's right. And that's where all of this thinking and writing, and James Porter, 40 years as in the art department. Mei Jackson, his first student that did the Slave Boy. Okay. Hale Woodruff, the murals out of Atlanta University, just a brilliant painter. You can just run through because I want to make sure we get, this is Richmond Barté.
These are on display
Yeah.
at the University Museum and Gallery. This is one of my favorite pieces. It's
a Russian dancer. Okay. Now, there's no such thing as black art or white art. It's just art. We're trying to get to that, and hopefully this will help us start removing some of these labels.
I actually had a conversation last night or the night before with a lady from the Museum Society who said that very thing. She said, if I look at this, I just didn't know. I wouldn't think that it was African American. She said that, and it came from a pure place, but it was exactly what we already know.
Charles White. Now what I like about this piece is 1943, Charles White is being photographed by Gordon Parks, one of the great photographers in American photography.
And as he's painting one of his most famous pieces.
Yeah, as he's painting a mural in Chicago. Okay. Miss Catlett. Okay, this is Jackie 1974, but we also have a sculpture by her, and she's more known for her sculptures, and she always focused on the woman. She married Charles White, which was next, and then she divorced and then married Morrow, the Mexican muralist. Moved to Mexico, speaks fluent Spanish. Yes, we speak Spanish also.
She actually gave up her citizenship.
Yeah. Because she was so rebuffed by America and what the opportunities and so forth and so on. Go ahead. Aaron Douglas, he was the artist for the Harlem Renaissance. His pieces depicted the Harlem Renaissance and the iconic pieces. Charles Austin, the teacher. The reason he's not more famous as an artist because he could paint any style of anybody. But his idea was he was an activist and he was a teacher. This guy here is just extraordinary. Extraordinary. And we were just fortunate to have a piece of his work. And that's what the Kinsey Collection has tried to do. What we wanted to do was to bring the spirit into our homes, and all of this beauty. Lois Maylou Jones, she taught at where? Howard University, 40 years. You look at that painting there, she loved going up to Massachusetts. You can't tell me who painted that, okay? Alan Craig. Isn't this cute little graphite on paper? But this guy lived to, almost 100, just tremendous artist. Sergeant Johnson out of the Oakland, San Francisco area. We got just got a piece about 5 inches in wood that is just an extraordinary piece. Right. Okay, James Wells. He's another one of the masters. Go ahead.
One thing I love about James Wells is that he became a printmaker and only really released his prints so that African Americans could afford his work and collect his work. And that's just a beautiful, beautiful gesture, because he probably could have found even more success by his original work.
Miss Savage, Augusta Savage, probably best known for winning the 1939 bicentennial exposition. And she, this is just a tragic story. She and Charles Austin, activist, sculptor, and teacher, and ran workshops in New York, and really was the energy behind a lot of the artists during the Harlem Renaissance. And she became so disaffected with America that she broke up all of her sculptures, tore up all her paintings. It's just a tragic story. Here in 2002, a lady called me and said that she was cleaning, that all of Augusta Savage's papers and belongings had been thrown out on the garbage heap. And this is not an untypical story. We get this all the time, where we just get thrown away because there's no one to leave it to, or it's just all kinds of stuff. But here this lady died penniless and broken. Okay? Why don't you do this one?
One of my favorite artists, a leader and a huge influence in the abstract expressionist movement. His contemporaries and friends were de Kooning, Rothko, Jackson Pollock. The list goes on. And the tragedy in that, it's actually been, kind of starting to be redeemed. But during his life, he couldn't find any success while he was considered to be the pinnacle. And while he was struggling to sell his work on street corners, his contemporaries and friends that he had direct influence and inspiration on were going on to sell their work for exorbitant prices while they were living. And we all know those names, right? And we know the importance of those artists, but he was just as important and just as brilliant. And he died uncelebrated. He died, without anyone really, really recognizing his brilliance. And now we are seeing over the last at least 5 years on auction and sales that he is commanding he's starting to command those prices, but he's not getting it. He's not getting it, and that's the tragedy of it all.
And let me just say this with Khalil. In the historical area, if you take a Phyllis Wheatley, who wrote the first book, September 1st, 1773, at 17 years old, she dies penniless and divorced at 32, okay? And nobody even knows where her grave is. And so, and literally every one of the figures that we have studied died unknown. And so a lot of what we are doing is giving voice to that, to those contributions that were just literally thrown away and beaten down to a point that even with their genius and talent and artistry, they were not able to overcome all of the bigotry in America. Okay.
This is Delilah Pearson, and actually, she's been gone quite a bit, but we quite a while in time. But we had the opportunity to acquire many of works that she collected. And one of the things that I love so much in this story, and I think is so inspirational, is to think about the community and all of the things that were going on, because these artists weren't in silos. They all worked together, and they knew each other, and they supported each other, and all of these things. So here it is. She's a brilliant artist, but she had this incredible collection of art. And we are very fortunate to share her work, her collection, not only her piece, but what she had collected. And we are in our labels, we deliberately say from the collection, the Lila Pierce collection.
So she can live.
So that there's that connection, the connective tissue, and that we think has to happen. Without context, history in general, I always say without context can be a very dangerous thing. and without the connecting points, but even more community and talking about all of these things. That's inspirational, because I know me growing up and all my friends, I grew up as a creative person and continue that. And if I can see myself in that, saying, wow, that's like me and my boys, me and my crew, you know, it's the same thing. But you start seeing that there are people that you are standing on their shoulders and that you can do it as well. But the problem in African American community is that none of that's highlighted. And we often are taught, and therefore by extension over time we share and support it ourselves, that we are that we're just out here on our own.
Yeah, let me just say this. And you know, one of the good things about what we try to do, and I always say you got to have enough resources to do this. You know, we have been singularly focused, and we just tell people we can do this. I don't need your help. You follow me? In other words, I don't need permission for us to do this. We went out and acquired this with our money, with our resources, and we put this together. So now we can tell the story the right way, because we're not beholden to anybody. And my dad, UB Kinsey, would love that, okay? Because that was the kind of guy he was. He wasn't beholden to nobody. Okay.
This is one of my
she's a sweetheart.
She's the top.
High school teacher. Wanted to paint. She's 80 years old and has the first one-woman show at the Whitney. Check that out. You follow me?
And paints abstract.
That's right. Charles Seabury. This came out of the Delilah Pierce collection.
It's beautiful in person.
Yeah. Merton Simpson. Merton just died a few years ago. We knew a lot of these people too, you know. So he developed these relationships. Claude Clark. You take this one, huh?
I'm always attracted to things that remind me of home in Florida. And that little house right there reminds me of going out in the country in Lake City, Florida, to visit relatives that I only got to see maybe once or twice a year. And that just reminds me of that. And I always say things that remind me of home help keep me grounded, help keep my feet on the ground. Los Angeles is a real crazy place. You lose yourself out there, and I don't want to be lost. So I gravitate to things like this. And Claude Clark normally paints, I think, things that remind him of his home, actually.
Yeah. And we got to know him before he passed. You know.
Yeah, okay.
So. Benny Andrews, we spent a good weekend in New York with him.
Sure
you know,
did.
that was the other thing. These real people, you know, they painted, but they were people, and we used to hang out with him, you know.
He was a renowned printmaker, and I'm always drawn to abstracts, but he to this day is considered to be just one of the top.
He was the premier printmaker. But you mentioned this could be Chinese, right?
Yeah, when I was walking around with the artist, he looked at this and he said, and he's a calligrapher. He's a very established calligrapher, and he looked at this and he goes, "This, if only I could have done something like this." But he goes, "You know what? It actually looks like something I could have done."
Yeah. Someone else said that last night too.
Because it's human. It's just
human.
human.
It is very human.
Jacob Lawrence, I think his reputation precedes him. But one thing, an aspect of the collection, is that this is not what this piece and pieces like it are not what Jacob Lawrence became known for and what people really started collecting. But that is something that we're intent to do, is to show other phases and other stages of work and show their range. And so this is one of those instances.
I have a personal connection to this because my uncle, who also was my elementary school principal when I was growing up, actually knew Jacob Lawrence. I didn't know that my uncle knew Jacob Lawrence. He died, and I find letters from Jacob Lawrence and his wife, Gwendolyn Knight, when they lived in Seattle, Washington, to my uncle and my uncle to them. He would come to California to visit us, and he'd say, "Oh, I'm going to Seattle to see some friends," and he never said who it was. And I think at that time, I might not have really known who they were either at the time. You know, I wasn't following their level of art at that time. And so I have letters in our collection. Matter of fact, we need to put them in the exhibit, of these letters. So I always tell young people, interview your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, find out who they know, what they know, and see if you can search through some of their photos and their letters and stuff, because that's part of our history.
Bearden is probably one of the most famous African American art. I mean, he's with Jake Lawrence, but he was also, what I love about it, he was a writer and an activist. So he pushed up on this notion of civil rights a great deal. But his collages are considered, the best. And is it out of North Carolina, country boy, that started taking scraps and making objects out of them. And he's got probably the best book on African American art history called Henderson and Robert Bearden. And that's another thing. You got to read to know, to train your eye. Go ahead. John Biggers, out of Houston, Texas.
We had a chance to meet him too.
We actually sent him to Nairobi to do a sketch that we have in our home that was to be at Florida A&M on the 4th floor in the business thing. So he is just a tremendous artist. We got to know him really well.
And I apologize, we're going to have to speed it up a little bit. This is
piece.
also John Biggers.
Yeah, that's the piece. Sketchy. When we sent him to Nairobi, this is what he came back. Is that?
Yeah.
Love that piece.
Beautiful.
Love that piece.
Paris, 1963.
Richard Mayhew, you'll see we gave him a prominent wall in the exhibit, and he is still living. He lives in Santa Cruz, California, 93 years old. And he comes to many of our exhibit openings.
And that's one of the pieces I miss most at home, frankly.
We did an exhibit in Santa Cruz, top of the year, and he was right there, and it was great to see him.
He's part of the Spiral Group, a group of black artists, Charles Austin, that really pushed up on this notion of bigotry and racism.
Dear friend.
It's Phoebe Beasley, who does collages. And when I first met Phoebe, the thing that I gravitated to also was she did women mostly and grandmotherly figures. I was raised by my grandmother, and so I have a print of hers. I don't know who owns the original, and I doubt if I could ever purchase it now. But I gravitated to her. We've become great friends, frankly. She spends a lot of time at home with us, and she's very special. And that's Miss Artist Lane with Mrs. Michelle Obama.
This is also a dear family friend. Dear family friend. This was commissioned by my parents, some of my parents' best friends, for their 35th anniversary, and was gifted to them for that. And Artist has been a dear friend of the family for I don't know, decades now. And she is is she
80,
late 80s?
88 now.
And just as spry and active. And she is Canadian, and she became a U.S. citizen only to vote for Barack Obama.
And this
and you see
2009. 2009, Mrs. Obama unveiled Sojourner Truth at the Visitors Capitol Center in Washington, D.C.
She's painted portraits of, you name it.
She's tough. And this is the first time a person of color was in the Capitol. Now, you check that out. Black people built the Capitol. Every aspect of the Congress and the Capitol and the White House were built by African Americans. He's another good friend, Ed Dwight, the first African American astronaut trainee in 1960. He decided he didn't want to be an astronaut. He wanted to paint. He went back to school at University of Colorado, got an MFA.
Real quick story on that.
And guess what? Boom.
We were in Hawaii at a gallery at a Hyatt hotel and saw a piece of his work. And we went in to look at it and found out that he was African American. Again, you couldn't tell from the art who he was. And so the young lady was telling us his story and about him being an astronaut trainee and all. And we looked at each other and said, how come we don't know about him?
Yeah, because we're supposed to know this brother.
We're supposed to know. And so literally, Bernard called him, found out he was in Denver, called him in Denver, invited him to come to Los Angeles to something. We wound up giving an art show for him, and we've been friends ever since. That was like 1986, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Another friend. Yeah. We bought this piece. We bought 2 or 3 pieces, but 1988. He was just starting out. And once you train your eye, you know when you're buying the right person. You get me? If your eye's not trained, you just think you're buying art. So we knew we had something here with this guy, and he paints the Gullah people out of South Carolina. And
those are the people who still practice a lot of the ways of Africa.
West Africa. And this scene is a typical scene coming out of the South. You follow me? You paint your experiences, and that's what he does. And Miss Ava Cozy, where are you?
She's in the audience.
Yeah, right there.
She is.
Does everybody see her?
Wave your hand.
All right. Ava, we met Ava in Houston. We did a show in 13 or 14. And we were just struck by this image. The concept of this painting really is what undergirds the Kinsey Collection, is part of this myth of absence. On this dress are all of the inventions that African Americans contributed to the world. And literally everything you could think about, we touched it.
Yeah, this was surprising. Traffic lights.
Yeah, traffic light, right.
So much.
Wait, go back. Ava's words at the top of that piece, too, says something to the effect
we didn't come
we didn't come to America because it was a great place. We came to America to make it a great place.
Yeah, and I think that is really well said.
Mr. Floyd Newsom, who is also
Can you wave your hand
blessed
as well?
us with his presence.
Where is he?
Or did they have to step out?
No,
he's over there.
Okay,
He's over there.
there you are. There you are. But we have created a great bond with the Newsom family, and it is a pleasure to have not only Mr. Floyd Sr., but also his son Floyd Newsom as well, who is a great friend of mine, but lives here in Hong Kong and just got his permanent residency. So that is a full circle, of a connection point. But Mr. Newsom is an incredible artist who has a huge work on display. I mean, in the permanent collection at the Smithsonian, the newly opened Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, and it is great to have you with us. And finally, this is what what we refer to as our logo these days. And this is by Samuel L. Dunson. This is 2000, The Cultivators. We were in Savannah, Georgia, and visited the Savannah College of Art and Design, which I still to this day wish I attended.
Yes, I do too.
And my parents often would, in those times, because they are so big on education, they would ask, well, who's your best and brightest, and ask to meet them. And we met Samuel Dunson, and my parents commissioned him to do a work, but they didn't ask him to paint any one thing or anything. They just wanted to support him, because that's the biggest and greatest thing you can do for an artist. And it took him quite some time to get back to my parents. And when he did, he came with this work, and he wouldn't take any money for it. But he said after meeting our family, this is what he saw. And he painted us as cultivators of knowledge and sharing knowledge. So my father, that is a depiction of my father, who is picking his harvest, and my mother, who is cleaning the harvest, and myself, who I'm reading a book by Khalil Gibran called The Prophet, and that's who I'm named after, and has had a profound impact on my life throughout my years. So this is a truly special piece, but it's our way of highlighting this artist and also sharing this work, and it is the concept that we lead with in our exhibit.
And this was 6 years before we ever started exhibiting anything.
Absolutely.
So I tell him that he spoke that into existence, actually,
It's a beautiful painting.
Yeah, it is.
And this is how we always kind of just conclude. I don't know if you want to take it, because I don't want to step on your lines. But an economist, give me his full name, Maynard Keynes, was doing an interview, and I guess he pivoted on something, and the journalist said, well, I see you've changed your mind. And he said, well, I got new information. And then he turned to the journalist, and he said, what do you do, sir, when you get new information? And that's what we ask all of you and people that visit the museum, because we try not to add bias or judgment or finger pointing or anything else. We just lay the facts out there and let you absorb them and come to what is pretty much a universal, inevitable conclusion on your own. And I think that's why we've enjoyed so much success and are embraced where we go, because this is a human story. It is something that we all can grow from, but see each other in and see ourselves in, and hopefully grow from in terms of how we look at each other, how we interact with each other, how we deal with each other, and hopefully we can create beautiful things as a result of it together.
That's a wonderful sentiment to end on. I know we've run over time, but I'm hoping perhaps we can ask one question. Guys. Any questions in the audience? Yep, there's someone over there, sorry. Sorry, Alice.
I know you guys were talking a lot about challenging your audience and the myth of absence. How would you want to challenge me, for instance, as someone from Hong Kong, both as a local person and as an expatriate, to think about this collection in light of America as well as my own city, a pretty recent ex-colony, and just thinking about the issues that you're raising while talking about art here. How would you like to challenge me when I go to see the collection in just like, what should I be thinking about specifically from Hong Kong, in Hong Kong?
Well, you know, Mark Twain has a saying, what gets us in trouble is not what we don't know, is what we think we know that just ain't so. And I think this is appropriate for your question. Well, we have been fed so much foolishness and taught so much, you know, that was just not accurate, that it's hard to dispel and to disprove some of that. But what we hope you'll have is enough openness to this information that you will begin to challenge your thinking. And I'll go back to what I said earlier, be careful what you think, because you don't know where it came from. And the Kinsey Collection, the historical record of America, is, I mean, well, I'll say it this way. You should buy the book, okay? That's the beginning. And it will be on sale when we finish. And I say that because what we have been able to do through these primary source documents is really shine a light on a part of the American story that is not understood. And we believe that the more light that goes through this prism is going to make America a better place. And we think the people that get this will be a better place. And you know, 6% of Hong Kong's population is ethnic minorities. You know, in America, we have just the reverse. I mean, literally, America is a minority country. So it's a whole different kind of world. But what happens in America, what we say, what happens in California drives the United States, and the United States drives a lot what happens all over the world. So go with an open mind and enjoy what you see, and I hope that helps you. Okay?
I said, except for Trump, California has nothing to do with that.
No, well, we didn't vote. We didn't vote that way.
Don't believe the Twitter that you put out there.
I highly recommend a catalogue. I have one, and it's sitting in my living room. I've been flicking through it over the days. It's a wonderful catalogue. I think we may have to end it here because we have gone over time. Thank you so much. That was so enlightening. Thank you. No, this is so much fun.
And thank you for sharing your Friday evening with us.
The catalog is available, and I'm sure, I think the Kinseys are happy to sign it. So on behalf of Asia Society, I want to thank Bernard, Shirley, and Khalil, and Yeewan for a wonderful, thoughtful evening. I think the Kinsey have said about, you know, learning, and I think the young person back there, it's just go and enjoy a show and think. And an institution like Asia Society Hong Kong, we're here to share information and to learn from each other. And I think this is something that I'm very, very proud of our center, and really want to thank again the consulate, Dara, and the continued collaboration with Dean Collins. And it's by collaborating. I mean, the history is ours, and we have to go and learn and tell our story, whether it's in Hong Kong, United States, or wherever. I think it's very important that we share and really collaborate and learn from each other. And you guys have brought a wonderful collection here to Hong Kong at a very interesting time, globally, locally, and it's something that we're going to learn from, and I can't wait to see it. So on behalf of Asia Society, thank you. Thank you.
Don't walk, run, go see it.
Okay, small token of our appreciation. I think we gave you the book, and this is something easier to carry. So thank you. Thank you.